everyone. Thanks for joining me for Where I'm From 85 with Sara. What are you reading? I have read You Could Make This Place Beautiful by Maggie Smith. I loved Keep Moving, which was her book before this, and obviously her viral poem, Good Bones, which You Could Make This Place Beautiful, that's where the line comes from. I thought it was a beautiful book. And the experimentation with form and just the idea of a memoir, I thought was really compelling. And I just read it. I tried to savor it, but Sara is here, and I'm just trying to.
Hello.
Hi! I almost wore something rainbow, but then I decided to wear
Good.
something black and white because I thought I would
I
I'll
like
be
it.
counterpoint.
Yeah. I almost changed when I got home, and then I was like, no, I should be rainbow.
Yes, you definitely should be a rainbow. It's
Very
on
on brand.
brand for you. And is your
Oh yeah,
hair, is it
it's
colorful?
rainbow. Everything
Yes.
rainbow.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
my
And do
hair,
you do it
no.
all yourself?
I-
Okay.
it's
Because it's amazing if you do. I
it's
mean, it is
it's an
regardless, but
art. Like I literally watched her do it, and I was like, how?
yes.
Like I do my
Yeah.
own hair when it's like all one color, but this is like next
Yes.
level rainbow goodness. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. And is your
It's
natural
like
color like my color or is it
yeah,
lighter?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
then that's a
No.
real
Oh,
process, like to get your hair to take color and stay. Oh, oh no. Something happened. Oh no. It froze, Sara. How strange. Hmm. Okay, I'm trying again.
I don't. Yeah, that was
That was very weird.
all of a sudden I saw myself and I was like, what just happened?
And it said, I am not the word couldn't join. And I was like, well, she just joined. Anyway, it's
Instagram, the
Instagram.
best.
Um, you just sort of have to, yeah, be
With
at
your
peace with
non-piece. So no,
it.
no, seriously. My
Yeah.
my husband says this all
Who
the time. You
knows?
have to be at peace with your non-piece. It's like a I'm assuming a not Han, some quote. He quotes him.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right, right. Yeah. Yes. I
Yeah.
love that. It's true. You have to just I you kind of just have to accept. So what does your Instagram
Yeah.
handle come from or
Well,
mean?
it was funny because my Instagram handle, my whole blog thing before I met him was the life of a Solivigant. And Solivigant means wandering alone and like all that. And so
Okay.
when I met him, he kind of ruined it in a good way. Terrible.
How dare he?
Um,
God.
but it really
Yeah.
got me thinking. And I've always been someone who overanalyzes words and like really pays attention to language. But I'm thinking about the words we use to define
Mhm.
ourselves and how so Solivigant was
Mhm.
applicable at the time, but is no longer like serving its purpose in my identity. And so I was like, what's a word? And then him and my husband and I also still get weird saying husband. That's another word I find fascinating. But
It's a
yeah,
very fraught or
I,
loaded word. It took me a long time. And then I sort of use it like, I don't know, I feel like I'm almost using it in protest. Like
yes,
this is what a husband can
exactly,
be like
exactly.
too,
Yeah,
you know?
seriously though, like I say partner a lot, but like sometimes when I'm trying to explain the situation, the husband just
Yeah.
makes more sense and kind of gives context. But
Hmm.
we were reading about I think his name is Alfred Korzybski, and he is a scientist, linguist, all these things. And he says there's this thing where he says the word is not the thing. And so what that means is like just because it's the label, we have to label, we need language to communicate. But like this is not a chair I'm sitting on. The chair is just the label for the thing that I'm sitting on. We create all these words to help us understand the world, but we also create the meaning of the words. So if we all of a sudden decide chair is not this thing, and we decide the bed is called a chair, eventually words change, and that's what language is. And so we actually got tattoos. This says, "This is not a tattoo." Um, and he has one as well, and it's just like, I am not a word. I'm not a label. So it kind of snowballed, and then I just like, oh, I am not the word. And then I put, and because I'm like travel related as well, a lot of people only just recently realized that it was not the world. Right. People thought it was world. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
I can see that.
a little.
Yeah. I think that,
yes, I think
did we meet through Amanda Montell? Is that how? Okay. That's what I thought, but I wasn't 100% sure, so I didn't put that in the caption. But it makes sense that with this whole story, that's how we, because I think word slut, like that's, to me, that book is a
seriously
love letter to words.
It's fantastic. It's one of my favorites. It really is.
Yeah, and it's like this sort of book, it's so difficult for me to summarize or really talk about. Like, you can pull little things out of it, but it's just like, oh, just read it and just see like how powerful, because you talking about how words change and talking about the word husband, because when you said that, it made me think of the word bitch, and how I'm always like kind of tempted to use it because I want to like take it back because it's been used against, weaponized against me so many times. But then I'm like, I don't even know if I want to use it. But it's like a word that I have a very complicated relationship, much like husband, because of all the like societal weight.
I've been so against marriage like my entire life. So it's really hard for me to use the husband and not be like, I know, like I have friends watching this and they're like, each have a husband. Right. and I know they it's all the I told you so and whatever, and it's all fun, and like my close friends we joke about it and stuff, but like in reality I really like the I told you so, like I didn't change my mind, like it wasn't just like, oh yeah, I found the right one, I love him, he is the right, all that, but it's so much more complicated than that. And I think a lot of people, like, I don't use the word husband lightly, like I don't, it's the same thing, like it's not a possession, I'm not his possession, like I have to remind myself that it's okay, it's just a word, I can decide what that word means for me. But it's complicated.
I think it is complicated, and I never thought I would get married it wasn't really the institution. I mean, yes, it was the institution, because I didn't see anybody showing me that it looked good. So it was like, why? I don't really want to invest in this system. It doesn't seem to pay very good at dividends. So I don't really want to get involved in it. But I also changed my name. So then people are like, oh, and I am like always been I've always identified as a feminist, when that was very uncool in the 90s, like, feminists are bitches, to use an earlier word. And, but I preferred a new name to the one I had because of all the things that were associated with that name. So I understand about it being complicated. And it's interesting how we layer our own stories and our own experiences on top of other people's words, so people come at you with like, oh, well, this is why you got married. You're like, actually, I need to give you my 5-paragraph essay on why I chose to get married.
And it's sad though, because like, it's funny because we talk about it all the time. Like, my husband and I told him, I was like, it's funny because I was so close-minded about it. I was so close-minded about this one thing. I was like, no, marriage, absolutely not. I will never change my mind, blah, blah, blah. And for someone who's so open-minded about other things, the fact that I was so like close to this is just ridiculous. But we talked about how, am I really going to dictate what I do in the future or what I do right now on something I said for the past 30 plus years, just because that like that's such a rigid way of thinking. And who says marriage has to be this thing, or who says husband has to be this thing, or wife has to be this thing, like, and
wife.
Oh, have you read the essay I Want a Wife? Have you read the essay I Want a Wife?
Husband.
So I do it in my
Yes,
AP
which
Lang
is
class,
great.
and I do, there's an
Yeah.
updated one, and I love doing it in my class. I can't wait to do it in my AP Lang class next year. But it's just,
Mm-hmm.
it's so fascinating because in the memoir I hope to write eventually, I have a whole chapter, an essay on wife. Like, it's such a loaded word, and I hate it. I hate it so much. So
Mm-hmm.
much.
Yeah.
It is.
I think
It
it's worse than
is, because think
husband for
about what
sure.
it has
Yeah.
always, like, kind of all the connotations that come with it, all the ways in which we expect so much out of wives versus husbands, and people can say what they want. Things have changed, things have progressed, but like not entirely, like not
Yeah.
everywhere.
For sure. And that's what I love in Word Slut, her talking about all the words that are insults and are about how people are debased that are based on
Right?
words
Like,
about women. And, you know, wife is this
oh,
close. In a
for
100 years,
sure,
it's going
for
to be a
sure.
slur,
Yeah,
for sure.
I wouldn't doubt that. I wouldn't doubt it, seriously.
They're going to look back and be like, where does that word come from? Um, so I really loved that chapter
Yeah,
because I was like, oh,
yeah. Her
yeah.
entire book. Yeah.
Anything that's coded language for woman
No, yeah, that's the
is,
thing.
or
It
not even
doesn't have to
coded,
be coded.
is the
Yeah,
worst thing you could be.
anything women related, unfortunately. But what you said about taking
Yeah.
things back, like the word bitch. So I feel like um, I don't feel uh, as strongly about that word, because I feel like it would take, yeah.
You're younger
I
than me, and
think
so I
there's
think there
that,
is part
but
of that
also
too,
for
like
me it
for
was
sure.
slut. So I almost did an entire thesis on the word slut,
Yeah.
because when I was in
Yeah.
school,
Yeah.
it was such a uh, terrible thing to be called. But at the same time, I'm like, I was always like, why? In high school, I was like, why is slut not like a derogatory word for men? Like, why do they get off? I was always so strongly against double standard, whether it became slut, dress codes, all of it.
Yeah.
It drives, even as a teacher, it still drives me nuts. I'm like,
Dress codes.
why do we have dress codes for girls and not boys? And you can say, oh, it's for everyone. No, it's not. Like,
Yes.
no.
No, it's not. I was actually having this conversation with my
Oh
son
yeah.
yesterday about tank tops because, you know, it's about
Oh,
spaghetti straps and how
I
you
know.
it needs to be 3 inches. And we were talking about why that is because we think because boys don't wear spaghetti straps. So you can make a rule about tank tops and say it's for everyone. But most boys, I mean, there are some boys who wear
Yeah.
spaghetti straps, but for the most part, that's a girl thing, you know, and that we do like really try to find a way to work dress codes and saying they're for everyone, but they're only commenting
Yeah,
on
because
generally
they're
close
created with women's bodies in mind. So yes, men might wear spaghetti straps.
Yes.
But let's be honest, if a man, so way,
Would they
yeah,
get
like if he showed
dress
up and
coded?
it, like he won't. Like, if anything, they'll like avoid it. I was that kid in high school who, oh, I can't show my bra straps. I'm gonna put my bra outside of my clothes. Like, sorry. Like, I hated all that stuff, and now that I'm a teacher, it's so hard for me when I'm supposed to, like, so I'm at a school right now that dress code is not a problem, but I've been at schools where there's uniforms and stuff like that, and they're like, you have to tell them when they're not wearing something right. I'm like, no, like I'm not. It's just not a rule that I think
Yeah.
is important. I don't think we're setting an example. Oh yeah,
And the kids know that about
they do.
you because the kids always know
Oh,
what
they do.
teacher cares and what teacher
Yeah,
doesn't. And
yeah,
it's so interesting, you
it's
know.
true.
Um, and I do want
Yeah,
to say one thing before you start your poem. Like, I agree about slut. And that's part of the
yeah,
reason I also love the title word slut and trying to take back that word about because it was so difficult to be a, you know, a sexually
yeah.
like a
Seriously,
sexual person and not be called a slut.
yeah,
That was just what it was. And trying to navigate that minefield of like what, so how many
yeah.
people can I, you know,
What's the
do stuff with
what's the
before I
line? What's
become
the
a
number?
slut?
Like,
Yeah.
arbitrary.
Yeah. Yes,
Like,
the
who
number.
cares?
Oh God.
Yeah, exactly.
Whatever they
It's
decide.
literally whatever
That's what
the
the number
person you're
is.
talking to decides. Like, it's silly. It's silly.
And they mostly decide it's you're one if you're not interested in
Of
them. I
course, of
also
course.
found that. Nobody who you're with thinks you're a slut. It's everybody who
That's
you're not
true. That's a
interested
good
who
point,
thinks you're a slut.
actually. That's really how it works.
Yeah. So, you know,
Well, of
or
course.
lesbian.
Of
That was a
course.
big one in my age group. And it's like, I always found that, and it was always like, thrown as an insult. I'm like, I don't really
Yeah,
buy into
like,
that, but okay,
but once again, it goes back to
whatever works for you.
insults. Are women like these words to insult? It's always an insult against women. Like, anyways,
Yeah.
I could talk about that.
Yes. So I could talk about this. I know I'm the same way. I could talk about
Okay.
this forever, but I do want to hear your poem
Thank you.
because I've read it.
All
It's
right.
lovely. So, yes.
I could have written so many different forms of this, but I stuck with a theme because I do that. So, I am from reading on my steps at the side of my house as people walked past. One book devoured after the next, lost in the fictional worlds, escaping my own for no other reason than the joy found within pages. I am from short strolls to the library, scanning book cover after cover, gradually mixing nonfiction into the fictional tales, bringing home one, then two, then more. I'm spending hours, days. I'm from spending hours, days, weeks, months, reading anything and everything. I am from learning new ideas, my mind expanding, my heart exploding, my worldview imploding. I am from a different mindset, knowing too much but never enough, always wanting to learn more, but often wishing I knew less. I am from a lifetime of exposure to differing minds, differing ideals, differing beliefs, differing views. I am from a force field, a shield of ideas, to protect me from societal expectations, who to be, what to wear, how to think. I am from feminists before me who wrote so I could grow and know who I am and how I am. I am from all the books I've read, all the minds I've peered into, all the ideas I've swallowed whole, all the lives that came before me. I am from because they wrote.
Speaking of a love letter to words,
The first thing I think of when I think of like my childhood and stuff is just reading. Like, it's always been reading. I was always that kid who, like, literally I was known in my neighborhood as the girl who reads on her step. Like, we didn't know my name. It was just the girl who reads on her step. And so I've written versions of this poem often because I get my students to write them usually at the start of the year. Yeah, and
I
I'm
would
the
think
kind of
that. I was
teacher, like,
wondering.
I don't always do the assignments with them, but like when it comes to this kind of stuff, I usually do it. So I've written different versions, and like I've done ones that are like ones that I probably wouldn't share with people, and ones that are a little too personal.
Right.
But then there's ones like I just feel like this really sums me up. Like, this is who I was, especially in my teenage years, but throughout my entire life, it's always been reading. I have tattoos on me for books that I've loved, and like the hardest thing for me right now in my life is that I've moved so much that I don't have my books. Like, it's really hard to travel with. So
Yeah. Yes. And how are the libraries?
So there are
in
libraries.
Slovenia?
So that's good. With no,
because that's not everywhere.
It's true.
That's something
like, I've
we
lived
have.
in places there's just especially English books in libraries, but they are here. I haven't
Right.
navigated them
Right.
yet because I have a Kindle, and as much as you know,
right.
it
That's
is.
perfect though for the situation.
I know, but
Like,
I was
that's
so
what they're
against
invented
it for
for.
so long. It's not.
I know. It's not the same experience. For me, it's very convenient, but I don't have the same, like, I just really like to touch it. It's such a tactile thing for me, and I like to flip to when the chapter ends.
Yeah.
Like, that's something I do a lot. And you can't, I mean, you can do it again. It's really weird.
Yeah,
Not that satisfying.
I do miss it. And I feel like as a kid growing up, just reading and reading and reading and going to the library, like, even though I went to the library, I also had my own collection of books. And it was always my dream to have, like, I wish the wall was a bookshelf. Yeah. Like, that's my dream. And like, eventually, I think we're going to stay here. So I think I might be able to start buying books, maybe bring some here. But that's a tricky one because, like, I love them, and I love going through old bookstores. Like, my favorite thing on travels, regardless like where we are, is going to secondhand bookstores. Like, even if I don't buy anything, I'm just like looking and seeing what's available. Oh, the smell.
Well, the smell.
Do you know what? I find that people either know the smell or they don't. Like, they're like a reader. Like, some people are like, what? The smell? Yeah. Like, what are you talking about?
It's like cilantro. Some people it tastes like soap.
I think my whole family thinks it tastes like soap, and I'm the only one who doesn't think that. I didn't eat cilantro forever because I was told it was terrible, and then I eat it. I'm like, what are you talking about? Yeah.
Yeah, that's a funny one. It's like, because that's why people hate it. And I didn't know that for so long. I
Yeah.
just thought they didn't
No,
like the taste of
it tastes like
cilantro.
soap.
It's
It's
like,
wild. So wild.
yeah, it tastes terrible, actually. Yes, the smell of second. And also I think just being immersed in, it's so
Yeah.
interesting what books are there and what survives and what, like it's always interesting to see what kind
For
of
sure.
bubbles up to the top, like what remains. Because, oftentimes when we're in the thick of our lives, it feels like, well, this all is so
Yeah.
permanent.
It.
And it's not. And then you go in a place like that and it's like, oh, here's evidence of, the impermanence of
Yeah.
it all. And I love things like that. I know that it makes a lot of people really uncomfortable, but
Yeah.
I know where it's impermanent. So I sort of like cleave actually to things that
Well, permanence
reflect
is an interesting word because we talk about it in terms of tattoos. Because my husband,
mm-hmm.
when people are like, "Oh, but tattoos are so permanent," he's like, "Only permanent." He's like, "Only as permanent as we are."
Forever. Mm-hmm.
What?
And they're like,
Yeah. Okay.
moving
Like
on.
it's just it's so silly because it's like, and also like technically now you can remove them. I don't want to, but like it's just, yeah, and it's just so fascinating.
Process.
But yeah, the impermanence of everything. And so we were in where were we? We were in Hallstatt, Austria last week, and oh, it was so beautiful.
Yes, I
Oh
saw
my
your
God.
pictures. Gorgeous. And you said, oh, so many people call it touristy, and I'm like, I've never
That's
even
so
heard of it.
funny. Yeah, no, like when I said we were going, I had two people I know be like, "Oh, really? It's so touristy," or something along those lines. And I'm like, okay, like I'm a
Yeah.
tourist. Another word, like fun. Yeah,
I loved that you said
yeah.
that
I
too.
don't
Well, you are
live there.
we're tourists,
Seriously, like
everyone. We're not
right?
fooling anyone.
I'm taking pictures of literally everything. Like I'm a tourist. It's just
Right.
it's such a so there's
Right.
this whole tourist versus traveler debate that's been like, oh, it's just, and also expat is immigrant. I'm an immigrant.
Yeah.
I came here for work. Like
Right.
why is there different words? Because my skin color, I could get into that forever. But
Yes,
right? Like
absolutely, because
I
of your skin
literally like,
color. I mean, yeah.
well,
Or I think
yeah.
also
But
socioeconomics.
even
I
so,
think it's related
like,
to that as well.
so when you think about it, so I forget I looked up the definition of immigrant. And so I left originally Canada to go to, well, I went for school in Australia, but I went to Thailand to teach because there were no teaching jobs in Canada. I left because I could not get work for it. So like,
Wow.
how is that not like, how am I like lauded? I'm going for work. Like, it's just such a fascinating, this is what I mean. This is why I want to write this book, because there's so many words that if I get labeled or good,
I will read it.
I'm holding you to that.
I truly
Yeah.
will, because this is like my sweet spot. I love all of this stuff. Well, and it's like very fun. And that's another thing. This is a bit of a, like, I love Amanda Montell, but I do love how she makes these things fun that have always been fun to me alone with no one to talk about it.
It is.
So
Yeah.
I think there is an audience for it's, I mean, it's a little bit navel gazing, but so is every memoir. So you're in the right space. And it's like just kind of considering our place and how so many things influence how we perceive our place.
I feel like I could write this book and not have it about me, but I just feel like the books that I've connected with recently that are nonfiction are memoir-esque. So like I just read Laziness Does Not Exist. Have you read that one? Yes.
Yes.
So good.
It's on my list. No, it's,
but
because I feel that way.
And I grew up in such a productive, like you should be productive all the time.
Well, sure. I mean, that's white supremacy and capitalism. Like, you're done.
Sister and I are both like fully embracing the, like, we don't need to be productive 24/7. I'm sure my parents, I hope they're not watching, but they do not appreciate that mindset. We definitely turned out different than them. But I feel like this book, it was like, so he comes at it from like a very psychological like perspective and stuff, but using his own experience within it, the people he knows or himself and stuff like that. And so I like that. I like the mixture of it. And it just, I don't know, it brings a little bit more relatability. You can connect with it more. I just feel like you said, it's more fun. So like Amanda Montell's book, she's fascinating. And even if she doesn't bring in necessarily memoir stuff, she makes it more interesting and relatable, as opposed to just dry linguistics. Like, most people want to read linguistics books, other than people who are really, like, I've read dry linguistics books because that's who I am. But like, most people, you're not going to sell that many books if it's just linguistics. So it's just, yeah, I feel like bringing in a little bit of myself. And like, people have always told me, so I always laugh because people are always like, oh my gosh, you should read a book, or oh my gosh, you should be published in Nat Geo, which is flattering. But like, and then I see them say that on like other pictures or other people who have like somewhat interesting lives. And I think it's just one of those platitudes, these kind of general comments when people are doing things outside of what you're doing. It's like, oh my God, you're so interesting. But so many people traveling out there. There's so many people. And like, I'm not saying my life's not interesting. It is. But it's, if I were to just write a memoir, I remember after the workshop with Amanda Montel, I read some stuff on memoir, and it was like, basically, so in my mind, I'm like, well, at least I'm more interesting now. I got cancer. Trauma makes me interesting. But then I wrote, don't write about cancer. It was literally like, there's so many people with cancer, stop writing cancer memoirs. And I was like, okay, I guess it doesn't help me. But
I think, though, you can write about the language around cancer and I love when you share about that, because as a survivor of rape and sexual trauma, like, I find out the language around that difficult to unpack. And there is that same sort of like, nothing happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. Yeah. I mean, nothing happens for a reason. Also true, but that's not what they say. Everything happens for a reason. God doesn't give you more than you can handle. You know, all those kind of platitudes about it's like good for you. Yeah. Sort of like the silver lining thing. And it's taken me a long time to be like, no. Like, maybe longer than I feel like it should. But it when I hear it now, I like go like this when I hear people say that stuff. But for a long time, I was like, okay, like this is positive. No, it's not. Like, you're living with it, and you that's amazing. And it's not to take away from the strength and the resilience, but I'd rather not. Okay.
Oh, like, for me, I'm just like, I'm too outspoken, I think. Like, sometimes I'm like, okay, take it back a little bit. But
no such thing.
I do feel like some people think I'm talking directly at them, because, like, when I was diagnosed, so many people call me strong and brave and inspiring, and like, thank you, I appreciate it. It's nice. I don't do anything. I literally, it always made me laugh, because I'd be sitting in my chemo chair, literally just sitting there and doing nothing. It's sometimes working, which is a whole other thing I need to unpack one day. But like,
that goes with the productivity. Circles back.
But I would be sitting there, and I'm like, I'm so strong sitting here, and like, people would just constantly, and it's just this language where you kind of got stuck with, like, these war men battle, the fight. You're strong, you're brave, and some people, and don't get me wrong, some people do find it inspiring. I find older people do.
Yes.
Little kids do.
Yes.
People around, like, I'd say 20 to 40, maybe even 50, are kind of like over it. They're like, for the most part, they're just like, that's not helping me, right? Like, it's not being strong for something I can't control. Like, and that's another thing. Some people think they can control. I personally, I don't.
Right. Yeah. I think that's a different thing too, right? Like, you're fighting it and you're winning. I think that whole, like, just attitude, I find it very uncomfortable, because some people fight really hard and then lose.
They get what? They die, and you're like, lost their battle? Like, screw you. I didn't lose anything. Cancer died too. We both died at the same time. Like, give me a break. Like, and that's what I love. I've seen, so I follow this account called The Cancer Patient, and they do all this dark cancer humor. And oh my gosh, I
think I've seen some of your reposts from
the post and the conversations that are had. It's just like, it's one of those things where, sorry, I lost my train of thought. So it's one of those things where they post all the time about the experiences, and people are like, oh, that's not me. And it's like, we all, like, we're not a monolith. Like, I I have multiple myeloma. My blood cancer is not going to be the same as someone's breast cancer, but my cancer is not going to be the same as the next person with multiple myeloma. And so that's one of the things I think that gets lost in all these, like, I love posting and sharing my stuff, but like people get so annoyed sometimes. They're like, oh, well, that's not my experience. I'm like, I didn't say it was. Like, it's just mine. And so I've been like mindful in actually writing, like, this is my experience. I am not talking for every single cancer patient.
Yeah.
Like,
which I feel like is
you would
implied,
think,
but I
like,
I mean, I get frustrated by that sort of how we feel like we need to qualify. I do the same thing, you know, like, this is what I've been through and this is how I've processed it or whatever. But also, okay, yes, it's your experience, which is what I'm here for. And I think if we write or speak about it without platitudes, I think it helps people feel less alone and less like, I don't, just like about your experience and what it's been like for you. And how do you feel about the word survivor?
So I've actually been writing about this. It's such a tricky one because technically in the cancer community, you're a cancer survivor as soon as you're diagnosed because you're surviving with cancer. Yeah. So for me, I'm in remission. So it's a lot easier to say I'm a cancer survivor now that I'm in remission. But I have a hard time because I talk to people who are stage 4 and they'll just always be in treatment, or they just have less likelihood to ever like get out of treatment, be in remission. And to call themselves survivors, like I've talked to them about it, it's just such a it has such meaning for people that, like, am I a survivor? Did I survive? Is this surviving? What is surviving? Like, and then people are like, well, I call myself a thriver. And I hate that word.
You're right. I'm asking because it's something that people are talking about around sexual assault and rape too. Like, because a lot of people are saying, oh, I don't like the word because people die later, usually because they kill themselves because they couldn't, you know, unshackle themselves or live past it or whatever words you want to use. Like, they just couldn't. And I can imagine that's the same with cancer. I mean, you could eventually die of cancer. Like, when do you become a survivor? When you die of something else? Is that when you're eventually, like, it's not like when you are officially a survivor, you did it the whole time. But at the same time, I do feel like I survived something. So it's complicated for me. I don't dislike the world. I also don't know what other words
language
to
is limiting.
use.
We have the words we have, right? And we can create new words. We can create new phrases. So one of my friends in the cancer community, she does beautiful poems. Her name's it's like Sara Lou Writes on Instagram, but she started the Cancer Rebellion. So she calls herself a cancer rebel. And so I was like, love it, rebellion. Sure, that's adopting that.
That does seem like to really be perfect,
like, unless I call myself a cancer rainbow, I don't really know. It's perfect. So I've been trying to use that, and I always try to give her credit because I see a lot of people like taking, you know, from people. She started it. She's wonderful. It's such a great way, and like for me, it works. I can see why other people might not think rebel really works for them, and I think it just, you have to think about what works for you, and then tell people. You can't expect people to know that you don't want to be called this, or you don't, you know, like, that's the hard part, because we've for so long called people survivors for this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, if you don't want to, you have to tell people. And like, the problem is people have to be receptive to that too. So I find it's very hard. I'm really learning how to like create boundaries and stuff around things that are said to me or commented on. And people aren't always receptive to that. They think that you're trying to argue or you're mad or whatever, and it's like, no, and it's just,
you're trying to police them.
I want to feel comfortable about speaking to me or speaking about, and so I think that's why I speak out as much as I do, because so I remember when I was trying to find my place back in Instagram, I was kind of like, now that I have cancer, so many people unfollowed me when I got cancer. And I was just like, goodbye.
Sorry, I'm laughing. Like, that's just so spot on for when you have something terrible happen. Like, how
Yeah,
many people are just like, actually, no, that's
I've
not what I'm
literally
here
had
for.
people write to me and be like, I thought you were a travel account. And I'm like, I'm a person. I'm sorry. Like,
Right?
yeah, like,
I'm not an account, actually.
oh
I'm
man, I
Sarah.
hate when people call
Yeah.
people accounts. Like, they're like, do you know this account? I'm like, I'm a person. I'm like, it's not an account. Oh my God. But like these things, like, so I started speaking out about it, and then so I'm a teacher, I'm used to making PowerPoints and stuff like that, and so I'm like, I could write this in slides and help other people so that they can, without having to say it themselves, they can just put it in their Instagram stories, because sometimes I am passive aggressive. If I see something I don't like someone post, I find something that I can post in my stories that's counters what they say.
I think every power user does that. You know, like you're just like, I don't know you well enough to say something. You know, like that's not our relationship, but I do see this and it isn't
I just
okay.
feel like
So I'm just gonna,
sometimes I don't want to be like,
maybe you'll see
I
it.
don't need to have a Facebook or Instagram or whatever argument. Like, I'm not here to necessarily change your mind.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and so
And I probably
I'm
won't.
just gonna post some information I know. I do this when it comes to like wildlife stuff. When I see people like ride elephants, I'm like, okay, so I'm gonna put how that is relevant. Or my personal favorite, I hate multi-level marketing. So anytime I see something I don't like, I just post something
So hard.
I just know so many people, and I'm sorry if anyone out there listening is in a multi-level marketing. It's
No, I agree with you. And I grew up in a very multi-level marketing kind of situation because I was born in the 70s, so like Herbalife and like the real beginning ones. And you see people's lives taken hostage. And you also, because it was really early on, there were actually people I knew who got rich. Like actually did, because it was early enough. No one's getting rich anymore. Like at all. And it is cult adjacent, if not a cult, like actually a cult. So it preys on people who are already vulnerable. And that's the thing that really pisses me off. But that's what cults do in general. Like, so that's on brand for them. But like, you know,
feminist
it's
language. Like they're trying to make this empowering thing.
Boss
and
bitch.
You're preying on women. Like, girl boss is not like
I know.
thing. Yeah. Like, we're just bosses.
Yeah.
Come on. Like man does this perfectly. Like, if we have to put girl in front of it, how empowering is it? Like, it's just, or CEO, mompreneur. Like, you're just an entrepreneur.
God.
I
don't think I've heard CEO.
Terrible.
That's terrible.
Terrible. Like, it bothers me because I see such smart women. I see these smart women, and I'm just like, it's just.
It's hard though, because there are, I mean, we do need to wrap up, but I've enjoyed this conversation so much. But no, don't be sorry. It's very, very, when you have children, if you choose to stay home or you do stay home or whatever words you want to use, you know, a lot of women feel, and men who stay home, feel like they're not being utilized parts of themselves. And so these MLMs are like, be your own boss, you know, and it's just, it's so frustrating. It makes me, so as a person who is and was a stay-at-home mom, I embraced it and was okay with it. But there is not a lot in our society that supports women who are intellectually curious, and that this is an okay choice. Like, there needs to be something else. You couldn't just possibly be a mom. Ugh, yuck, that's terrible. You know, and it's like, no, it's fucking not. No, I don't need to make any like excuses for my choices. If you have a problem with it, you need to really think about your relationship to parenting.
It boils down to that. Like, if you can't deal with that, then like, you figure that out. That's a you problem.
Right.
But
yeah. What are you actually doing?
Oh my God.
Fuck you. I'm actually being a parent.
As someone who does not want to be a parent, I like the work that goes into being a mom. No, thank you. Like the things I see my friends have to put up with, or like my coworkers and stuff like that. I'm like, no, thank you. I do not want that. That is a lot of work. I personally like have it like the job I have. And to think about having a job on top of that is like, it is a job. Like, I don't know how. Exactly.
And to have society erase you and tell you it's not a job. And that if you say it is a job, you're a real squeaky wheel. Really? Come on now.
Yeah.
How hard is it? It's fucking hard.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my God. Seriously.
You try it out. Get back to me. So yeah.
Oh my
so
gosh.
MLM. We've really covered a lot of
MLMs are
territory.
reading. I like reading. I'm a reader.
We look forward to your book, Sarah. I hope that it's hard to write a book. I'm doing it. And it takes a lot of like real looking in the mirror, metaphorical mirror, and saying, I can do this. I should do this. I can take up this space. It's not selfish and narcissistic. It's actually worthwhile.
Oh,
because I like hit that wall over and over again. Why would I write a book?
You just how I felt for years.
So
like,
write a book.
I'm like, I'm a narcissist. Why am I doing this? Why am I doing work? Why? Like, what? Who cares about what I have to say? Messages from people, but really, like, I get messages from people or these kinds of things where I'm like, oh, people actually do care about what I have to say. So nice. It's like, I don't know. And you know what? I'm not doing it to be some like rich author. Like, I don't care about that. Right?
Because who are they? But
who out there? No.
You're not going to be Stephen King. So, no, you're doing it because for me, I will say that writing a book has been a real process of reclamation. Like, this is all these, this is me. I am all these things. And it's just taking the space and believing in myself, if only for myself, it's worth it. That doesn't actually make us narcissists. That makes us like, giving a shit about ourselves. I don't know what the word is for that. Self-care. I hate that word.
I can talk about words all night.
But it's the co-opting of the words, I think, oftentimes that makes them feel icky.
That's the thing. But once again, we create the meaning. So if you want to use self-care, what you mean when you say self-care is all that matters. Like, who cares what everyone else thinks? Like, what the silly MLMs that they sell products for self-care. But seriously, like, we get to decide. So if I want to call myself a bitch, a slut, whatever, I am. Sure, whatever. Who cares? If we want to do self-care, literally just sitting here chatting self-care, which it is, to be honest. Like, it is.
That's true.
Because we said it is. So that's how it goes.
This was so great. I knew that I would really enjoy talking to you. We've never spoken to anyone who's watching this. We've never spoken. We've just messaged on Instagram. So this is how a person messages. And
that's one of my students.
Who cares what anybody else cares? I figured because it was Miss Sarah.
That's one of my students. Anyway.
Thank you, Dawn. Well, thank you for joining me. This was such a joy. And thank you for sharing your poem.
Me too.
And I look forward to talking to you again someday.
I can't wait to read your
reading your book.
So we'll exchange.
Okay.
Bye. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.